Step 4 in my teaching formula is power. And I had the opportunity to learn the secrets directly from Bryson DeChambeau on how he took his ball speed from 190 to 220 in his practice sessions. And I'm going to show you exactly how he did it step by step. So first off, understanding that my teaching formula involves 4 steps: pivot, plane, impact, and power. And all of those are equally important. As a coach, when I'm evaluating a golf swing, I'm running it through my golf swing audit, which if you click the link in YouTube, I will give you a free golf swing audit. All you have to do is click the link, fill out the information, and I'll be happy to assess your golf swing to get you playing better golf sooner rather than later. Understand that I'm evaluating all 4 at the same time, and I'm figuring out which is the biggest area of opportunity for you to accelerate results so you can play better golf sooner rather than later. Power is one of the fun ones. Once your golf swing is very efficient, now we're looking, how do we take your golf swing and add in acceleration in certain parts of the swing? See, there's 3 simple forces that are going on in the golf swing. Everyone most commonly knows rotation, right? Clearly the body is rotating through the golf swing. But I think what's hardest for golfers to understand, there's 2 other big components. One is called lateral flexion or side bend or tilt. So the way the spine is moving through the swing is actually a speed accelerator. And I would tell you that Scheffler is probably the one that I think visually you'd be able to see it the easiest in, and I'll explain that later in this video. And then there's extension. So if you think of a high jumper, if they squat down, all of the joints are bent. This is called flexion. And then when they jump and leave the ground, all of the joints are extending. It's that simple. So that same thing's going on in the golf swing. Another great example of that would be Tiger Woods. If you think back in the day, mid-2000s, early 2000s, everyone was talking about the Tiger squat. Well, why would Tiger be squatting in the middle of his downswing? Easy answer. Because if you're in a squatted position, now you're in a position to jump and push away from the ground to create extension. The most flexion creates the most potential energy for extension. Now, would I tell someone or teach someone to go into max flexion? Absolutely not. There is going to be standard deviation of how much flexion to bring into your swing, because at some point, I would never go to the top of the backswing and then sit all the way down to then jump all the way up. You could imagine that golf swing would look really funny. It'd be really hard to hit the golf ball. But we are building in potential energy through flexion and extension. So now that we know the 3 power sources in the golf swing, which I called rotation, flexion extension, and then lateral flexion or tilting of the spine, I'm going to take you through exactly how Bryson was practicing to take his 190 ball speed and get it up to 220, which was pretty incredible. I had the opportunity to stand in and shadow him many hours down at Dallas National. He only would do this really in a hitting bay because he wanted to see his data. He finds data so important, which I do too, but it's also a feedback mechanism in his practice sessions. Because understand that when you're trying to make your swing more efficient, more powerful, if you just focus on using swing speed trainers alone, that's really not the secret. Because what he taught me in that scenario is, well, Andrew, if you're working on swinging a stick faster, yeah, you might be able to increase that over time. But when you actually have a golf ball in front of you, he always noticed that it didn't transfer to faster ball speeds. What did transfer to faster ball speeds was when he would practice with a golf ball and his normal equipment, or maybe his long drive driver, and he would put himself in an environment where he was just hitting a ball, he was looking at his ball speed and trying to beat his ball speed swing after swing. And there was something so profound that we found out in that process, because we do not trust what others say. I believe truly in testing, analyzing the data to see if what you're actually trying to do is going to change outcomes. And it did in this case. So what he was doing was he was practicing in the hitting bay, and he was trying to hit the golf ball as hard as possible with his normal form and technique and focusing on his ball speed. And if his ball speed came out with his driver at 190, he'd look back at me and he'd go, Andrew, he goes, in a few swings, I'm going to be able to get this to 191. And I was like, okay. I'd watch him. He'd swing 190. He'd swing 189. He'd swing 191. And then he started explaining to me. He's like, what's going on is my body has to accept that it's capable of doing what I'm asking it to do. And it takes time to get there. So he would do this for an hour, legitimately an hour straight, hitting the ball as hard as he could, and it would start at 190, and for the first few months, I mean, it was like he would get to the end of that session and be at 195. In an hour's time, he'd go from 190 to 195. And it wasn't because he was doing any speed training per se with speed training tools. It wasn't because he was going and lifting and throwing medicine balls against the wall, which might have been part of his process, but I'm telling you, the big change for him was when he was just practicing on trying to beat his ball speed swing after swing for an hour straight. He got so specific with it that there would be time frames where he would put a 2-minute clock up and he would hit a shot, take 2 minutes. And he felt like that gave him enough time to recover, but it was also simulating golf. When you're playing golf, you're not just hitting ball after ball. And so when I'm evaluating your golf swing, what I'm going to be looking for is, are you accessing all 3 power forces or sources in your golf swing? And if there's one that's over-dominating the other 2, that can actually become a power leak. For example, the most overused force in golf because of misunderstanding is rotation. Most golfers get to the top of the backswing with limited rotation. And we see that in the pivot, the knee not allowing it to straighten somewhat. If it straightens, extends, the hips rotate more. If it doesn't, the hips are locked in. Now the arms try and get longer, and they normally go vertical. So we're not getting to a position of hand depth, which then would create angular momentum back down to the golf ball. Another thing that I'm going to take a look at is when we talk about rotation, well, okay, if I under-rotate at the top of the backswing and then I focus on rotation in the downswing, the club goes over the top, outside of the plane line, outside of the hands. Now I'm swinging out to in, and what am I going to do? I'm going to rotate. Now I've got my hips open, my chest open, which might seem like a good position. I've got the trail foot over-rotated. But I would tell you, if that golfer walks into my hitting bay, what I'm going to do is the exact opposite. I'm going to maximize rotation at the top of the backswing, and I'm going to minimize rotation in the downswing, because that's going to help us go from steep and over the top to deep and shallow. Deep and shallow is what you want to see when you're a slicer. You want to go to deep and shallow, and now you have a chance to hit the inside portion of the golf ball, start the ball away, draw it back. So in conclusion, we need to evaluate your golf swing from a face-on perspective, from a down-the-line perspective, to truly understand, are you utilizing the power sources within you to create that speed and power? Now, if you take another golfer that puts primary focus on lateral flexion of the spine, tilting of the spine, if you look at Scottie Scheffler's golf swing, driver specifically, at the top of the backswing, if I were to show you his spine, just think buttons on golf shirt and belt buckle. If you drew a line in between those two, at setup you're typically going to see tour players have a little bit of spine tilt away from the target. When he gets to the top of the backswing, he actually gets what a lot of people call a reverse pivot going on, where his head starts tipping towards the target just ever so slightly. So his spine is now leaning this way. Well, guess what? He also has the most hip slide on tour, which is about from here. If you drew a line, if you measured from top of backswing P4 to impact and just beyond impact, his belt buckle is going to move 10 inches from here. And so what is the spine doing? It's tilting. And that's one of his power sources. Yes, the hips are rotating. Yes, he's using flexion and extension. But his amount of slide in the hips is what's a power source for him that he's using through flexion of the spine or tilting of the spine. And so you won't see that much hip slide in certain tour players because if they build in the weight forward and then they turn, they don't have to slide their hips because they're already in a weight forward position with their lower body. Now all they have to do is really turn and extend. Versus if you get the most weight onto the trail foot, which I would not recommend, but if you did this, you're going to have the most lateral motion to have a chance to strike the golf ball. So again, I'm Coach Andrew Banner, and if you like and subscribe this page, what I would tell you, the biggest way to get started and take advantage of this process is to build in a self-assessment. And where can you do that? I offer that for free. Click the link in my bio, and I will break down your golf swing, take it through my golf swing audit, my teaching formula of pivot, plane, impact, and power, so I can identify what are the biggest opportunities for you in your golf swing to accelerate progress so you can have more fun out on the golf course.